It's Monday. It's not late. Here I am, ready to read. And most of you are probably asleep in bed, which is where I should be right now. But I'm not going to miss another week. So let's do chapter 14, in which the dragon has an allergy attack. We all stared. Oh, so Telemaine just said, I always forget to tell you what just happened. So Telemaine just said, I think you can avoid them if you go through the caves of chance. Chapter 14. We all stared. Ha! Shiera said finally. The caves of chance are even more dangerous than the wizards. I don't think so, Telemaine said. I have been through them, and they're not as bad as most people think. Furthermore, there is an entrance to the caves within half a day's travel and an exit that is very close to the castle. And once you are inside the caves, the wizards will not be able to find you. Why not? Shiera asked. The caves of chance do not welcome wizards' magic. Can you give us directions? I asked. Telemaine nodded and pulled a large map out of his sleeve. Most people don't even try making maps of the enchanted forest because things change so fast that an ordinary map is only good for a few days, so I'd never seen one before. This map must have been magical because it seemed fairly accurate. At least, all the things Shiera and I had seen were in the right places. Telemaine showed us where his tower was and where the castle was, and he pointed out several places he'd found wizards. Then he showed us the entrance to the caves. It really did look a lot closer and safer than trying to get by all those wizards. Even Shiera looked less doubtful. Then Telemaine turned the map over, and on the back was a map of the Caves of Chance. He went over the routes from the entrance to the exit we wanted, and what to do about some of the things we might run into inside. It was very interesting. I knew that trolls are allergic to milk, but I hadn't known that rock snakes like mirrors enough they'll stop squeezing someone in order to look at their reflections. He also told us to hold anything we really didn't want to lose, in one hand until we were out of the caves. When Telemaine was satisfied that we knew our way, he rolled the map up and put it back in his sleeve. We went outside to say goodbye. When you meet Kazal, tell her I will be coming for the battle, Telemaine said. I called her last night on the magic mirror to let her know that you're on your way, so she's expecting you. I'll remember, I said, and thank you again for your help. Yes, said Shiera. I looked at her, a little surprised, but she was watching Telemaine with an odd look on her face. I think I ought to apologize to you, she said finally. I wasn't very nice last night. This time I really did stare, but she didn't seem to notice. Telemaine bowed. Neither of us was blameless, he said. I shall forget it, if you will. Shiera nodded and turned to me. Let's go, then. I shut my mouth and picked up the bundle Morwen had given me. Shiera already had hers. We waved goodbye to Telemaine and started off into the forest again. Nothing much happened all morning. Shiera and I were both nervous anyway, thinking of all those wizards ahead of us. The dragons didn't seem bothered, though, and Night Witch certainly wasn't. Not much seems to bother cats. I don't know if you've noticed that. Unless it's not getting their dinner on time. We found the first few landmarks Telemaine had told us about, and we were fairly close to the entrance of the Caves of Chance when the dragon stopped and demanded lunch. As soon as the dragon mentioned food, Shiera and I realized that we were hungry too. We started looking for a good place to sit down and eat. Almost immediately, we found a huge tree lying on the ground in the middle of a small clearing. The dragon wrapped itself around a medium-sized tree in front of us. It said it was much more comfortable that way. Night Witch wandered around, investigating the interesting holes and crannies around the fallen tree. Shiera and I sat down and passed out gingerbread and meat pies from Morwen's bundles. How much further is it to the castle? Shiera asked the dragon, handing it a slice of gingerbread. Oh, not very far, the dragon said. About another day, if we weren't going through the caves. I've never been in the caves, so I don't know how long that will take. I thought you said this is a shortcut, Shiera said. It is a shortcut, the dragon said in a hurt tone. How was I supposed to know a fire witch was going to get in the way, not to mention an elf and a magician? Do you think Kazal will tell us anything about the sword? I asked. No one else seemed willing to explain, and I didn't see why Kazal should be any different. I'm sure she will, the dragon said reassuringly. That is, if you're polite to her. Kazal is very particular about... Shiera and I dropped our lunches and ducked hastily to either side. Achoo! Said the dragon. A large spurt of flame shot across the clearing, just missing us, and the dragon's tree shook. Achoo! Oh, bother! Achoo! Daystar, Shiera shouted. Over here. I ran around behind the dragon, who was now sneezing almost continuously. I pulled out my sword as I went. When my hand touched the hilt, I felt the same jangling I'd gotten from Antarel earlier. Then I came around the tree, and even before Shiera pointed, I saw the wizards. There were 2 of them, right in front of Shiera, leaning on their staffs and looking from Shiera to the dragon and back. Hurry up, one of them said nervously. We don't want this to get out of hand. I'm afraid you'll have to wait, another voice said from behind him. Oh, sorry, I think I forgot Antarel's voice. I'm afraid you'll have to wait, another voice said from behind him. The first wizard jumped, and Antarel stepped out of the bushes. His beard and hair were several inches shorter than they had been, and his staff had a scorched streak near the top. But getting caught in the little dragon's fireball didn't seem to have done much to him otherwise. He smiled and went on. You see, I want him too. Can't we discuss this somewhere else? Said the nervous wizard, eyeing the dragon. Oh, you needn't worry about that, Antarel said, following his gaze. He smiled nastily. I came prepared. He held up his free hand so all of us could see the spray of spiky, saw-edged purple leaves he was holding. Dragon's bane, he said unnecessarily. The other wizards relaxed a little. Such forethought, murmured the tall one. He exchanged glances with his companion, then bowed to Antarel. Under the circumstances, we will be happy to split the reward with you. I'm afraid that's out of the question, Antarel said over the dragon's sneezes. The boy and his sword are mine. The boy, said the nervous wizard. But the tall one frowned at him, and he stopped. The tall wizard turned back to Antarel. As you say, the boy is yours. I trust you've no objection if we take the girl? Antarel frowned. He turned to Shiera and stared at her for a minute, then shrugged. She's no use to me. Of course I have no objection. I started moving very, very slowly towards Shiera, so that when the wizards started throwing spells at us, I could try to stop them with the sword. The wizards didn't notice, and neither did Shiera. By the time the wizards finished deciding what to do with us, I was almost over to her. It's settled then, Antarel said. We help each other. The girl first? Why not start with the dragon? The nervous wizard asked. Antarel smiled condescendingly. Very well. He stepped forward and started muttering over the dragon's bane. Right away, the dragon started yelling. Yow! It said. Achoo! I hate wizards! Ouch! Achoo! Help! You stop that, Shiera said to Antarel. The wizards ignored her, and Antarel kept mumbling. I started forward. If I could knock the dragon's bane out of Antarel's hand, the spell would stop. I wasn't sure whether it would be completely broken, but at least he wouldn't be able to hurt the dragon anymore. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten about the other wizards. I didn't even realize one of them had done something until my feet stuck to the ground and suddenly I couldn't walk anymore. If I hadn't been stuck, I would have lost my balance. It was very disconcerting. Antarel was still out of reach. I took a quick glance back over my shoulder. The dragon was sneezing much too hard now to say anything at all. I could see its coils going slack, and it was losing its hold on the tree. Here and there, its scales were turning pink around the edges. Even the tree looked wilted. Shiera, I yelled, get the dragon's bane! I didn't think I could get loose in time, but the wizards wouldn't be able to stop the fire witch. I didn't wait to see what she did. I leaned forward a little and tried to lay part of the sword of the sleeping king across my feet. It hadn't helped Shiera when she was a statue, but this was a wizard spell, not a fire witch's spell, and Telemaine had said the sword was meant to be used on wizards. Besides, I couldn't think of anything else. It worked. I straightened up just in time to see a little tongue of flame shoot up from Antarel's hand. Antarel yelled and dropped the dragon's bane, which was burning brightly. Before it even hit the ground, there was nothing left of the plant except ashes. I looked behind me. Shiera was standing with a surprised look on her face and one finger pointing at Antarel. The dragon was still sneezing, but the green was already starting to come back to its scales. I sighed in relief. This is the assistance you give us? The tall wizard said to Antarel, who was brushing ashes off the front of the robe. The dragon still lives. Did I say anything about killing it? Antarel said. I got the feeling he was trying to sound haughty, but he only managed to sound annoyed. You need have no more fear of it. It will take some time to regain his strength, and by then we shall have finished. What next? The girl, I think, said the tall wizard. That is, if you're sure you can handle her. Antarel glared. That is the least of my problems, he said grandly. Ha! Said Shiera loudly. I moved back over to her. holding the sword in front of me. The 3 wizards looked at us, then each other. "Let us begin," said the tall one. That's very ominous. All 3 of them raised their staffs, but instead of pointing them directly at us, excuse me, I told you it was past my bedtime. Instead of pointing the staffs at us, they brought them together so that they made a kind of star about a foot from their ends. There was a bright flash as the 3 staffs touched, and I felt a shock from my sword. I jumped, and suddenly I realized that I could feel the forest. The magic of the forest, I mean. It was all around me, waiting. I felt almost as if the whole enchanted forest were watching me. Right in front of me, I could feel the wizard's power growing and building. There was a kind of pattern in it that kept getting clearer and more complicated, and I knew I had to do something about it before the wizards finished. I stepped forward and swung the sword right through the middle of the pattern. I felt a huge jolt of power from the sword, but it didn't hurt the way the Fire Witch's spell had. In fact, it didn't hurt at all. The pattern collapsed in an invisible tangle. Antarel's eyes started to narrow. The other 2 wizards just looked stunned, and then something exploded. I couldn't see anything. It wasn't that things had gone dark, and it wasn't that the light had blinded me. It was more as if the whole world had suddenly become invisible, so there was nothing left to see. There was a rushing noise all around me, and I felt as if I were floating. I heard a chorus of voices cry, "All hail the wielder of the sword!" And then the noise and the voices vanished, and I was standing in the clearing with the sword of the sleeping king shining in my hand, and 3 very surprised wizards in front of me. I stared at the wizards. The wizards stared at me. Antarel recovered first. "Enough of this!" he cried, and raised his staff. As he did, the ground in front of him humped up a little bit. A second later, a tree shot up about 12 feet into the air. It reminded me of someone opening an umbrella very quickly. The branches shivered once as the leaves unrolled, and then it burst into bloom with a sound like 100 little bells tinkling. Antarel looked even more surprised than before. Then he scowled angrily and pointed his staff at me again. The tall wizard next to him grabbed his arm. "Wait, fool! Don't you know what that sword is?" "Of course I know, oaf!" Antarel's eyes sparked. "It is mine! I will have it!" "You will be dead, you mean," the tall wizard said, but he let go of Antarel's arm. "This is a matter for the whole society of wizards. There may still be time to stop him if we can bring them quickly enough." "More wizards? Achoo! Oh, no, you don't. Achoo! Oh, drat! Achoo!" said the dragon. It dove out of its tree, unwinding itself like a spool of string very quickly. Its head shot past me, and I got a fleeting glimpse of green scales and golden eyes and a very, very red tongue. One of the wizards yelled, and the dragon sneezed again. I jumped forward just in time to see all 3 of the wizards vanish hastily. Antarel looked a little white, and he had one hand clutched around a dark, wet-looking spot on his other arm as he disappeared. I looked at the dragon. It snapped its teeth together twice, swallowed something, and sat back looking very pleased with itself. "Wizards," it announced, "taste much better than elves." I swallowed hard and decided I didn't really want to finish my lunch. The dragon looked at Shiera. Shiera scowled. "Don't look at me like that," she said. "I'm not a wizard, I'm a fire witch." The dragon looked thoroughly shocked. "But it wouldn't eat you. You're my friend. It wouldn't be polite at all." Shiera looked suspiciously at the dragon, then nodded. "I just wanted to make sure you remembered." "I think we'd better get going," I said. "Those wizards sounded like they were going to come back with reinforcements." "Oh, terrific," said Shiera. "Let's go, then. Where's Night Witch?" "Meow," said a kitten voice from somewhere above me. I looked up. Night Witch was perched on a branch of the tree that had sprouted up in the middle of the fight. She was washing her paws. She stopped and looked down at me for a second, then went back to washing. "Night Witch, come down," Shiera said. "Those wizards might come back any minute." Night Witch ignored her. The dragon came over and peered curiously at the tree. "Where did this come from?" it asked. "It grew," I said. "I think you were sneezing when it happened." "Kazal is going to be surprised about this," the dragon said happily. 2 new trees in a couple of days." "What are you talking about?" Shiera said. "It's just a tree." "No, it isn't," the dragon said. "It's a new tree, and it's the second new tree I've seen in 2 days, so it's important. The other one hit me on the nose," it added in an aggrieved tone. You mean it's been a long time since there were any new trees? I asked. The dragon nodded. Kazal mentioned it once. She sounded worried. I think they're a nuisance popping up like that. But where do they come from? Shiera asked. And why do they show up when we... She stopped short and we looked at each other. Daystar, said Shiera finally. It's the wizards. It can't be, I said. What about the first one? The dragon tilted its head to one side and looked at us. What are you talking about? The trees, Shiera said. Both of them grew in places where a wizard threw a spell at us, but there wasn't any tree when the first wizard tried to drown us, so it can't be wizards. I looked down, trying to think, and I saw the sword of the Sleeping King in my hand. It's the sword, I said. It stopped Andurel's spell the first time, and a little while later a tree sprouted. This time it stopped a bigger spell, and we got a bigger tree. It didn't stop any spells when the first wizard made that water monster, so no new trees grew. It has to be the sword. You didn't get a tree when you fought the Fire Witch, Shiera objected, but she sounded half convinced. Well, Telemaine told us the sword was meant for wizards. It probably only does that for wizard spells. Your sword grows trees, the dragon said skeptically. It does sound a little silly, I said. Meow. We all looked up. Night Witch launched herself at Shiera, who just barely managed to catch her. Good, said Shiera. Now, if you're all done fussing about trees and swords, how about leaving, before the wizards come back? The dragon and I looked at each other and nodded. We picked up our things and started off. And that is the end of chapter 14. So next time we will be reading chapter 15, in which they take a chance, and we see the Caves of Chance, and we meet even more exciting characters, I think. Oh no, we don't need any new characters until chapter 16. So maybe we'll read 15 and 16 together, because the next new characters are pretty fun. So tune in next time, and aren't you proud of me? I was on time. I just wanted to brag about that. And I'm going to go to bed now. Have a wonderful night. I'll see you next time. Bye.